All right, so like Don said, Wetlands Reserve Easements, it used to be called Wetlands Reserve Program. I wasn't sure how familiar everybody in the crowd was going to be with the program, so I kind of threw everything in here starting from the very beginning. So there's a lot of slides. I might go through some of them pretty quickly. All right, the program history, authorized in 1990. It was very, very highly influenced by Ducks Unlimited, and a lot of it was coming from the prairie pothole region with the conversion of the breeding habitat up there. So they introduced this bill to Congress, got it passed. Pilot program started in 1992, and it was nationwide by 1994. It has been reauthorized in every farm bill since its original showing in 1990. As I said, it was formerly the Wetlands Reserve Program. It's now come under the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. They kind of combined a few programs and gave them a new name. And I'm not touching this, it must not be me. And so now it's called Wetland Reserve Easements under ASEP, ASEP WRE. And it's a voluntary landowner program. NRCS is a non-regulatory agency. All right, let's see if this works. Am I pointing it in the right way? There we go. All right, goals and objectives of WRE. Protect, restore, and enhance functions and values of wetland ecosystems. Before, when it was WRP, and initially when it was first enacted, it was basically waterfowl, wading bird, waterfowl, endangered and threatened species. It was all wildlife and habitat. Now they have a little more politically correct here. They have all the other things added in there that typically wetlands do. So water quality improvements, stormwater attenuation, groundwater recharge, open space and aesthetic quality, native flora and fauna, contributing to the nation's natural heritage, and also for educational and scientific purposes. So these are all the objectives of WRP. It's been a very popular program and very successful across the country. Over 12,000 easements and almost 2.5 million acres put under easement. In Florida, same thing. I think we used to be number 2. I think California was the only state ahead of us. So we have 120 easements enrolled on almost 200,000 acres. This is a neat little map I found. This will show you the impact nationwide and the impact to the flyways. You can see over here in the Atlantic, all these red dots are WRPs. You can see the high concentration coming down. Mississippi flyway, they are definitely in the WRP, and not so much in the center here. And over on the Pacific, you know, like I said, California was number 2, so they got quite a bit over there. So Louisiana, Florida, California, and then these are probably little teeny projects. The thing that makes us stand out in Florida is we have huge projects. Most of the rest of the East Coast are little teeny, I don't know, they might consider 100-acre, huge, 200-300-acre, huge projects. For us, we average about 1,000. In 2002, we had the largest easement in the country with Alapata Ranch on public land. And then more recently, we now still currently have the largest easement, WRP easement in the country with Fish Eating Creek at 36,000 acres. So you can see the size of our scope. This was a slide I stole and it looks like it's a little fancy. So how do I get it to advance? Hopefully this won't go to the next slide. There we go. All right, I don't need it to be so fancy. We have 2 different types. We have a permanent easement. We pay 100% of the restoration, 100% easement value of the land. We also have a 30-year easement. As you can imagine, we don't get too many of these. I think we've had 1 ever, and they came in and reapplied for a permanent easement. So all our easements right now, I believe, are permanent. Eligibility, the land must have been wetland. It must have been manipulated for ag, converted for ag purposes. It must be restorable, just because it used to be a wetland. We can't buy it if we can't make it a wetland again. and it must be under private or tribal ownership. This was a change. I can't remember what year, two farm bills ago, we were able to work with public lands, and we did, like I said, we took Allapattah, that was 15,000 acres. That was at the time the largest in the country, and we do have several other. We work with St. John's, South Florida. So we do have some public land, but since then it's gone back to private only. Landowners eligibility, you have to be compliant with USDA agricultural requirements. A lot of the stuff is, we have an AGI, you can't make so much money outside of ag, you can only make so much money. You can't have any wetland violations, things like that. You have to possess clear title. You have to own the land for a minimum of 2 years. The last farm bill, it was 7 years. So people couldn't just buy it just to turn around and throw it into WRP, but they got that reduced to 2 years. Obviously, you have to agree to the program terms, and you have to agree to our restoration plan. All right, landowner reserve rights. What do you get? We pay you an easement. What do you get to keep out of that? You still get to own the land, which means you can sell the land. Quiet enjoyment of the land. You control access to the land. You have undeveloped recreational uses. You can hunt, you can fish, you can hike, birding, all that stuff. That's a granted right. You don't have to ask our permission. And you can actually mine, but you have to come from outside the easement area, so horizontal extraction of resources. So when people apply, how do we pick who gets in the program and who doesn't? We have a ranking form. It's based on these 5 factors. Hydrology is the largest. Obviously, it has to have been a wetland, and it has to be able to restore to a wetland, so that plays the biggest factor. The manual states a minimum 50% of the ranking points have to come from hydrology, so again, very important. Habitat type. We've decided the way we did it in Florida is we took those 5 objectives or 7 objectives, and we went through our habitat types that we have in Florida, and the ones, it's really hydrology. You can have, a freshwater marsh and a swamp hardwood swamp, whatever, same hydrology. So we just looked at it on that basis, and however many objectives you met based on basically your hydrology of the wetland type is how we got ranked. So it's a pretty good high priority on the habitats too, which ties back into hydrology. Location, we have a bunch of different points. They add up. You get 5 for this or 10 for that. You can add them all up. Panther zones, wood stork core foraging, waterfowl focus areas, if you're adjacent to conservation land. So where is your piece of land located next to? Obviously important. If you have a wetland in the middle of a Walmart parking lot, it might not be the best choice to restore. Wildlife, the more threatened and endangered species potentially using the site post-restoration, the more points you get. And we've ran into this recently, economic considerations. We used to get a lot of ranch land. That was the main one, and that was kind of easy. You put a ditch plug in and you walk away and you're good. Lately with the greening, we've had a lot of citrus properties applying, and that's a whole different ball game there, very expensive. You have to completely wipe out what's there. You have to start from scratch. You got a piece of property that's nothing but dirt. So that's a lot more expensive. So we started dinging those properties. It has to be cost efficient. So we started dinging the properties on the high cost restorations. All right. So the whole purpose of WRP, well now WRE, is to put it back to what was there to the best we can. So how do we know what was there? Well, you got historical aerials we look at, soils maps, historic accounts. You got landowners that have been there for generations. They can tell you what their grandfather, their great-grandfather, what was on the land. So the whole purpose of the project or the program, like I said, is to put back what was there. We're not trying to go beyond. It's not an STA. It's whatever type of wetland was there is what type we're going to put back, with the priority towards the wetter environments. Freshwater marsh ranks the highest, tidal marsh ranks the highest, so with a priority for those type of habitats. All right, 5 primary engineering practices. How to restore a property. I already made a reference to ranch land. You put a ditch plug in, walk away. Easy. No fuss, no muss, nice and cheap, but we get a lot more in depth with that in some of our properties. So structure for water control, you obviously have to have an outfall. Water reach a certain elevation, hopefully historical elevation. You want it to then be able to run off like it used to historically. Ditch plug, that's a simple one. It's a lot more cost effective to put in a little 50-foot long ditch plug with the elevation that we have in South Florida. Most of our WRPs are in South Florida. We don't have huge elevation changes, so we don't have to come in and fill an entire ditch. We can put a little 50-foot ditch plug. It'll accomplish the same purpose, much cheaper. So we do a lot of ditch plugs. We do a lot of stream crossings. A lot of our properties are on the ranch land. We do like to work with our landowners. Ultimately, we have control of the land. We build what we want to build, but we try to, work with them and build with something that they will like, they will take ownership of. They will tell their neighbors and friends what a great program this is, so we can have obviously more customers in the future, right? So as long as it doesn't adversely impact the restoration, we will definitely work with them and try to allow them to keep their operation as much as possible. One of that is stream crossings. They have interior roads they like to use. Well, we want to see interchange of water, right? We don't want to see a bunch of closed cells, so we'll do low water crossings where they can cross, wet sections, wetlands, and we can even set them to elevation so they almost become, structures for water control also. Dike, we're not, like I said, we're not STAs. We're not building 8, 10, 12-foot high dikes. We're building little 2, 3-foot dikes. Some of them are just to keep our water from running off so we don't lose our water, and then sometimes they're to prevent off-site, adjacent property off-site adverse impacts, get us through the permitting process. And then land smoothing, this is a big one. Obviously there's roads out there we don't want out there anymore, there's ditches we don't want out there anymore, so we'll just come in and smooth them down to a more natural topography. It really comes into play on the orange groves, and we've actually looked at, and even on the cropland, we're looking at even coming back in and trying to reestablish the historical topography. So not just land leveling it out, but coming in and putting in the different characteristics that best guess we can of what used to be there. Again, based on soils, historicals. All right, so here's some of our engineering practices. This is one of our wonderful WRE biologists posing. This is a box structure. Water control structure, again, set to a certain elevation. Hopefully that will mimic natural hydrology of the site. Everything's modeled, everything goes through permitting. It's a big process. We don't get to just go out there and throw a water control structure in. We got to prove to everybody why it should be there, what the elevation it should be, that we're not having any adverse off-site impacts. So this was a pretty neat little property here. This is actually public land. This is South Florida Water Management District, Williamson Ranch. This was kind of a little interior stream or slough that came through this wooded area. And then, it was just culverts. It was just funneled right off the property. Well, now we came in and set this elevation of something we would want. Here's a close-up of it. You can see the water spilling over it. One thing we like to do with WRP, WRE, these easements are forever, Forever is a very long time. We try to build something as passive as we can, as simple as we can, as robust as we can. It's going to last the longest amount of time, easy to maintain. So anyways, this is a trash rack on top. This is another type of water control structure we have, a flap gate. It's a one-way. Sometimes, we can model, we can look. Everything we say says the water goes this way. And then you talk to a landowner, he goes, well, when it gets so wet, it goes that way too. Oh, all right, so that's our solution to that. We want to keep the water once it comes. We don't want it to come back out, so we let it in, we keep it, and it solves that problem of water going one way and then the other way another time. Ditch plug, I'm not quite sure you can see this. It's right in here. This one's a little higher. We do an island type structure, but it's usually about a foot above ground. I think with, a certain percentage for settling, but this looks pretty big. Low water crossings, we used to use this geocell netting and fill it up with these rocks, and then here's your low water crossing. But we found out these rocks migrate under high water flows. So we've now advanced, gone to a little more technological materials here. So here's another one with water flowing over it. We use articulated block now. And like I said, we'll actually set this almost like a weir. So it's set to a certain elevation. And there's an overflow there. Jerry Joyner may be familiar with this property. This is a dike. Like I said, you can hardly see it. Low level. Nothing major. Sometimes we'll make them drivable. They may be 2-3 feet high. All right. Well, it's not as simple as just, putting in a water control structure, a ditch plug, whatever. Any of you guys that work down in South Florida, you'll know. If you restore a piece of property and walk away, you're going to get one heck of a jungle, right? And nothing's going to like it, nothing's going to use it. So we have conservation practices that we use to manage properties. There's 4 basic ones. I'm sure many of you are aware of them. Exotic and nuisance control, can't get away from that, especially in South Florida. We've spent $15 million in the last 3 years, $5 million a year, with a contract with the Army Corps of Engineers treating exotics for us. That's been a very successful program with them. Brush management, roller chopping, grinding, shredding, mowing. Prescribed burning. We have a partnership with the Florida Forest Service now that comes in and burns properties for us. That is a great, great partnership. I'm very excited about it. Relatively new. We've only done a couple, but we're hoping to do many more. Prescribed grazing. We actually, most of these properties, like I said, are ranch. We let them continue grazing. One of the things even the orange groves are doing, once it's sold, they come in and they put up a fence and they put cows in there and graze it. We like the grazing. It's a vegetation management tool. We do an NRCS developed grazing plan. They don't just get to put cows on there how they want. We tell them everything, how, when, where. We set up a whole grazing plan, NRCS grazing plan for them based on the new projected communities and the habitats. It's not business as usual. Most of our landowners are really good about this. We'll actually come in, we'll help them even do a better grazing plan. We'll get some rotational grazing going. We'll allow them to put up cross fences, and we'll get a much better system going. And it's a win-win. They still get to keep their cattle, and we get our vegetation management. Saves us a little money on, brush management or exotics or burning. We can get away with using the cattle. And then, obviously, which I'm sure is probably well known within this group, multi-prong approach is best. You can burn something and then hit it with chemical or vice versa or triple. Graze it, burn it, chop it. Anything that hits those exotics over and over and stresses them repeatedly is your best bet at getting rid of them. All right, vegetation management, why? Of course, setback succession, control woody invasion, control exotics, restore and maintain ecological structure, and then reproduction. Some fire-adapted communities, they won't reproduce without fire, so. Here's some examples of some work that we did. This was a big willow thicket. This is down south in Hendry County. Just unusable. We came in with the Army Corps of Engineers. One of their contractors aerially treated it. You can see it now. I went back and a year or less, I believe, and I was talking with the landowner. He's a big hunter. He said it's beautiful. It's opening up. The willows are already falling over. Ducks are pouring back in there. He's very excited about it. He's looking at either his personal enjoyment or an economic opportunity to lease duck hunts. So that worked well. This is the same property, a little more dry area of it with some brush management, heavy roller chopping. So this is a lane. This is like the right side, and that's the left side. And we're looking down this lane of these trees in the back. This was kind of a woody mess. It was wax myrtle. I think there were some peppers in there. Just kind of junk. Nothing the wildlife were too excited about. And now today, this is all maiden cane growing up. I think there's some sawgrass on the sides. It's the same thing, right-hand side, left-hand side, looking at the trees in the back, same exact lane. It's beautiful now. Prescribed burning. All the little woody junk got pretty torched in here. And here's beautiful cutthroat seep. This is cutthroat in the back too. Cutthroat seep, you can see the bigger trees are untouched. Cutthroat seep is loving it. Cutthroat grass is loving it. And then all this little scrappy junk is burned up. All right, I'm going to show you guys a couple properties. Actually, I believe Jerry Joyner's familiar with this one too. This is Williamson Ranch, South Florida Water Management District. The same one that the engineer was posing on the water control structure. So this picture was taken November, early November. So this isn't, there's still water on the landscape. It's not peak dry season. You can see the old outline of the wetlands, much reduced over what's there now. And like I said, there was still water this time of year. This is going to be a dramatic change here. So here's what it looked like after we restored it. I'll show you these little, I don't know if you can see these back here. So this was a ditch plug right there, DP, ditch plug, ditch plug, ditch plug. This was a borrow area. When we need spoil to build dikes or ditch plugs, we try to come in and build something natural. Sometimes we'll go like 2 feet, 18 inches, something that's perfect depth for ducks. And we'll take our spoil from there. But this right here, this wetland right here is this wetland right here. And you can see this historical footprint. And now with a water control structure in the back of it, now you can see it looks good. The water control structure is right here. You can see this whole big area, all this stuff right here. So that was post-restoration. This is that original wetland that I showed you that basically the ditch had water in it. Here's our water control structure. And now look at the hydration signature of that. And it matches exactly where, that outline that was showed before. There's another picture of the same property. This is a borrow area. Another borrow area. Oh, they made that one square. This is land smoothing. There was a road that was in here that was impeding water flow, restricting water flow across the property. That got smoothed to natural grade. Same thing here. Land smoothing, that got smoothed. This was an access road. It all got smoothed. Actually, yeah, all smooth. That road all got taken down. This is back to that original wetland that I keep showing you. And you can see all the wetlands now have water in them. And this is still early. This is early July, so it's not peak wet season, just like that wasn't peak dry season. This isn't peak wet season. Typically get away to middle June before it starts getting wet. So looks good. Successful restoration. This is another property that we made very wet. Not good for the people. Probably not too good for the cows, but, probably not too good for the cows there. But what did like it was, of course, birds. This place is beautiful, just full of everything. And this was instantaneous. This was basically 1 year. This property was cattle ranch and sod. We did a wetland determination on this property when I was an area biologist maybe 10 years ago, and I think we said there was 5 acres of wetlands left on this property. Now look at it. We got white pelicans there, great egrets, ibis, just all kinds of stuff. So remember, the original WRP and the new WRE, the number one, the first objective is waterfowl, thanks to DU, wading birds, and T&E. So this property is going to have it all. Little black-necked stilt. Oh, there we go. T&E, little T&E right there, snail kite with his little snail. All this stuff on the bottom, that's all apple snail eggs. You can see the white and the pink, so obviously we got invasive and native. I don't think they care too much. I've heard the invasive can be a problem for the younger birds because of their size. But you can see in the background, great egrets. And you can see the cattle in the background. This property, they kept property outside of the easement that they still have, and then there's the property in the, that we put the easement on that we made wet. So, and of course, what would it be, waterfowl summit without duck picture? So this is still the same property. Bunch of whistlers there. Oh, more whistlers, same property. You can see how wet it is. I mean, imagine this property had 5 acres. 5 acres of wetlands on it. They got, that water management had us come in and do a wetland termination, and we gave it 5 acres. So the whistlers love it. This I'd never seen before. Reproducing whistlers. I like whistlers. They're big, they fly slow, they fly straight, and they taste good. So I'm excited about the whistlers. You guys are probably going, whistlers. So here's something for the glamour duck hunters here. There we go, all teal, same property. These are all blue wings coming up out of the marsh. Again, 5 acres, no longer. Maybe 1,000 acres now. More blue wings. I don't know if you can see them. They're coming up out of the marsh over here, all over. So this property, historically, we had historical accounts from the landowner. The family had been on it for a long time. It was sawgrass marsh and bayhead. So, this hydrology, somewhere around what it should have been or was in the past. And not every property looks like this because, like I said, we try to put back what was there. So if we have a property that was, wet prairie, marginal, maybe hydric flatwoods, something like that, it's not going to turn out like this. It's not going to have a bunch of ponded water, most of the year, half of the year. It's not going to be 2 feet deep. So this was just exceptional property to get back to what people would normally think of, as the Wetland Reserve Program. Oh, one last thing, one last piece of the puzzle here. I talked a little bit earlier about our partnership. So how can, Florida do almost 200,000 acres? Well, we have partners, big partnerships. FWC, we do annual monitoring. Like I said, we can't just restore something and walk away. We got to go check it out every year, make sure it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, see if it needs any work, see if the exotics are getting out of control, see if it's being overgrazed. See if the woodies are taking over, see the hydrology is what it's supposed to be. So FWC helps us out with that. They do our annual monitoring on all our properties. And they also develop our habitat management plans. Our newer properties, we have what's called a WRPO, Wetland Reserve Plan of Operations. And that tells us how we're going to restore, what we want to do, what we expect in the future, our target habitats. And then a habitat management plan to keep those habitats and communities the way they should be, forever, in perpetuity. So they do those plans for us. Well, the new ones, they're done by our consultants. We have a whole bunch of properties. This program used to just be engineering driven. They would come in, they would do the restoration, they would walk away. So obviously, we've learned that's not the way to do it. So all our old properties, we don't have plans. So the commission's coming in and writing in these habitat management plans from scratch, which is a huge help. The Army Corps of Engineers, I talked about their exotic, help with the exotics, $15 million in 3 years. And they also build fences for us. A lot of the landowners, if they don't already have cattle on it, they want to put cattle on it, and so we build a boundary fence for them. Florida Forest Service, talked about them, prescribed burning. That's an awesome, awesome partnership I'm very excited about. Of course, you got to time everything just right with, the dry season, the wet season, and all that good stuff. But we're working on it. And then, of course, landowners. Like I said, you have a happy landowner, you have a happy partner, good stewardship of the land. They want to do the right thing. A lot of these people enter into this program because they want to see it in conservation. They want to see it protected. So they're very happy to help out. We have them do a lot of our practices. A lot of that comes from either the monitoring, if there's a need, or from the habitat management plans that the commission develops for us. And then we can approach the landowner and say, the commission, they recommend chopping, burning, whatever. exotic control, are you interested in doing any of this? A lot of these guys would rather do it themselves, especially if we give them some money for it, than having a bunch of strangers on their land all the time. You know, they put up with us, they know they got to deal with us, but sometimes having different groups of people all the time on their property, they're not too excited about. So they're more than happy to pitch in, help out, do it themselves. Sometimes we just give them a compatible use authorization, no money involved. And then we have to tell them how to do it. That's job sheets. That's also given to us by the commission a lot of times. Sometimes it's a need that we want. I mean, they either do it or we pay somebody else to do it. That's how much we want it done. So then we'll actually give them some money to go and do like exotic control, or maybe the myrtles are getting out of hand. You know, things that really need to be done, or the land's about to not really be usable to wildlife. Then we will pay for that. So that's about it. Questions, anybody? Oh, let me get the lights there, Don, so I can see people.
Talk about the prospects and problems of getting public access to these easement lands.
Well, there'll be no public to these easement lands because they're private landowners.
Can there be? Could there be?
No. I mean, there's public lands, and we do have people trying to get that back into the farm bill where we can, spend money on public lands. But a private landowner, that's a granted right. They retain ownership and they retain access, except for us. They have to let us in. But so that I'm aware of, I don't see that ever happening.
I mean, that's not the case in much of the Midwest, where these easements require public access, at least for passive activity in many places.
I mean, in the future, if the farm bill, of course, if it gets changed, but the farm bill as it's passed now, no. But it's reauthorized every 5 years, so. And who knows, the way they're changing programs, I mean, they could change the program, they could, make a new program. I like working with the public agencies. I remember one year, the way we ended up with so many water management lands one year is that the price of land was crazy sky high. I mean, 20,000 an acre, we're offering 1,000 an acre or something. It was, we didn't have a single landowner apply. So we had all this money, and you have to spend the money they give you, allocate each year, because it's the state con hates to give money back, because if you give money back, they tell you, well, you couldn't spend what we gave you last year, so we're going to give you less this year. So you never want to give money back. So I think we came down, I think there was like 2 weeks left. I don't know how many millions of dollars we had to spend. No private landowner had any interest at all in our money. So I think we did 5 projects that year. Every one of them was water management district. And they're great partners. I mean, obviously, a lot of them are wildlife management areas, so you got game and fish out. I'm sorry, I used to work for them when they were game and fish. You got the commission out there, managing the land, burning, chopping, doing all the stuff we would want done anyways. So it's a great partnership. I personally would like to see public lands back in the program, but that'll be decided up in Washington.